Money isn't just a tool, it's a revelation. It shows you exactly who a person is, what they fear, how they think, and most dangerously, who owns them. Everyone wants it, most chase it, but very few actually understand it. We dress it up with terms like currency, freedom, and success. But Machiavelli didn't buy into any of that. To him, money wasn't a goal. It was a weapon, a form of visible influence, pure leverage. He warned, if you don't understand how wealth is used to control, distract, and expose people, you'll be owned by it while still thinking you're free. The uncomfortable truth? Most people aren't chasing money. They're chasing the illusion that money equals power. But Machiavelli saw through that. He didn't care about riches for comfort. He studied how money could twist people without ever raising a single voice. So let's begin. Rule 1. Money isn't power. It exposes it. Watch what happens when someone gets a promotion, an inheritance, or a sudden windfall. They change, louder, flashier, more arrogant. They think the money elevated them. But Machiavelli knew better. Money doesn't change people. It reveals them. The strong stay grounded. The fragile inflate. The coward hides behind new titles. The manipulator suddenly becomes generous when it's convenient. The fool spends money trying to look wise. So here's your first Machiavellian truth. Don't chase money to feel powerful. Chase discipline, strategy, reputation. Let money follow as a side effect, not as your foundation. Because the saddest thing in the world? A wealthy man who walks into a room and commands nothing. Machiavelli saw kings fall, not because they lost their gold, but because they thought gold made them untouchable. Real power doesn't come from your bank account. It comes from your presence. When people adjust their tone the second you walk in, without you saying a word, that's power. Rule 2. Wealth without mystery is weakness. Today, everyone's flaunting something. Watches, cars, vacations, even bank balances. Machiavelli would have laughed. Why? Because when you show people what you have, they start planning how to take it. The modern world worships visibility, but Machiavelli mastered the art of concealment. The more people can see, the more they can target. When your wealth shouts louder than your wisdom, you've already lost. So what's the move? You scale in silence. You build quietly. You let the world underestimate you. Why? Because people don't attack what they think is weak. They don't plan for what they don't understand. The most dangerous person in the room is the one whose power you can't calculate. Let them guess. Let them doubt. Let them think you're surviving while you're actually in control. That's how you move untouched. That's how real empires are built. Not on noise, but on strategy. Rule 3. Never depend on money you don't control. This is where most people fail. They think earning equals owning. But if your income can be paused, taxed away, frozen, restructured by someone else, then it was never yours. You were renting it. Machiavelli feared one thing more than poverty: dependence. If your peace, your lifestyle, your security, your identity all hinge on someone else's approval, you are not free. You are decorated, but still in chains. Ask yourself, can one email kill your income? Is your survival based on someone else's platform? Are you safe only because you're trending right now? If yes, you're not building wealth. You're building a gilded cage. So what's the Machiavellian move? You build financial fortresses, streams of income that don't rely on applause, revenue that survives, silence, leverage that doesn't collapse when people stop clapping. Because once people need you for their income, you don't have to threaten them. You exist, and they comply. They'll apologize before you even raise your eyebrow. They'll obey and call it compromise. That's not power built on fear. That's gravity, economic gravity. And when people orbit around you, not because you force them, but because your system pulls them in, that's not just money. That's influence. And if you don't build that, you'll spend your life building someone else's empire, thinking you're safe, while someone else holds the key to your future. So don't just chase income. Build independence. Not the kind you post online, the kind no one can take. Because when you have that, you walk different. You say no without fear. You walk away without hesitation. You don't chase. You choose. Rule 4. Money tests. Loyalty better than words ever could. People will say they love you, they support you, believe in you, would never betray you. Then introduce money into the conversation, and the masks fall off. Money introduces options. It introduces pressure. It introduces temptation. Give someone a little power over your income, and watch how fast their loyalty turns into leverage, or worse. You get money, and they don't. Suddenly, you're suspicious. Your success offends them. Your growth makes them feel left behind. Machiavelli never trusted the people who only clapped when he was struggling. He watched how they acted when money walked into the room. Did they cheer, or did they compare? Because money doesn't change people. It unmasks them. So what did he do? He tested people. Silently. He'd offer a favor, a position, a resource, not to help, but to observe. Do they become arrogant? Do they cling too tightly? Do they act like your success is theirs to spend? If so, he withdrew. No argument, no conflict, just distance. That's the art of strategic generosity. You give not to be kind, but to filter, because some people are only loyal when they're cold. The moment they're warm, they forget who lit the flame. So you don't need to hide your money. Just watch what happens when people think you have it. Their reaction is the blueprint. And that blueprint, it shows you exactly who should never be in your inner circle. Rule 5. The weak worship money. The strong control access to it. There are only two kinds of people when it comes to wealth. The first chases it. The second, they realize everyone else is chasing it, and they control the flow. The weak fantasize about being rich. They scroll. They dream. They compare. They think the goal is the paycheck. But the strong, the Machiavellian, doesn't want a salary. He wants to become the source. He wants to be the one who pays the salary. Machiavelli never cared about how much he could spend. He cared about what he could steer. He understood something most people never will. The one who controls distribution controls direction. That's why kings had courts, why billionaires have foundations, why investors hold more sway than CEOs. Because when people need your money to breathe, they'll fall in line without being asked. So the real question isn't, how do I get rich? It's, what can I build that others can't live without? Ask yourself, what skill makes you indispensable? What system makes others depend on your existence? What value do you control that makes people orbit around you? Because the one who controls access doesn't chase opportunity. He becomes the opportunity. He doesn't apply for seats at the table. He builds the damn table. And the more people need you, the less you need to raise your voice. They'll adjust their tone before they even speak. Rule 6. Let them think money is the prize. This is one of the most brutal and brilliant games Machiavelli ever played. He let others fight over the coins, the raises, the trophies. He let them scramble for the prize, while he positioned himself to own the system that created it. Let them chase the title. Let them beg for promotions. Let them think the contract is the victory. Meanwhile, you quietly build the infrastructure, the machine that prints the prize, not just once, but over and over. You don't need to win the trophy if you own the league. Because here's what Machiavelli knew. Money runs out. applause fades, titles get stripped. But dependency, that sticks. When people depend on what you created, when they rely on your system for comfort, for identity, for access, they'll keep serving you long after the deal ends. And here's the cruel genius of it. They'll do it willingly, not out of fear, not out of loyalty, but because their sense of self is now tied to you. So while they flex the prize, you protect the blueprints. They celebrate a check, you design the entire economy. That's how empires are built. Rule 7. Use money to create comfort, then control the fear of losing it. Here's a psychological truth Machiavelli understood better than most. People don't work hard to get money. They work hard to keep from losing what money gives them. Once someone gets a taste, a little comfort, a little status, a little spotlight, it becomes their identity. And that is the leverage. The Machiavellian move isn't to overwhelm them with wealth. It's to give them just enough comfort to get attached, just enough attention to feel seen, just enough ease to feel safe. Then you pull back, slightly. You delay a call, shift your tone, withdraw your interest. You don't need to threaten. You just create a question. Did I mess up? That single moment of uncertainty, that soft fear, it makes people self-correct. They'll become agreeable, careful, obedient, not because you demanded it, but because they're afraid to lose the identity they built around your approval. Machiavelli didn't yell. He positioned. He knew that people will destroy themselves to avoid going backwards, not out of greed, but out of fear. Fear of falling from the comfort they thought they earned. You don't need to weaponize money directly. You just show people how fragile their reality is. And then let them do the rest. This isn't cruelty. This is architecture. This is how ancient empires lasted, not through brute force, but through ceremonies, symbols, whispers. You belong until you don't. That whisper alone can rule kingdoms. Rule 8. The rich aren't respected. They're measured. Here's a bitter truth most flashy people never realize. When you show off your wealth, powerful people don't admire you. They audit you. They're not clapping. They're calculating. How real is this? What did you overpay for? How hard would it be to replace you? Machiavelli understood that wealth doesn't impress the strong. It only excites the weak, the ones who want what you have. The ones with real power, they're not jealous. They're studying you, looking for cracks in your armor, because the moment you need validation, they know how to control you. So what's the move? Don't flash. Don't overshare. Don't prove. You don't need to announce what you have. You let your silence do the talking. When no one can measure your empire, no one can breach it. And that's what makes the quiet man rich in a way no one else is. He doesn't crave attention. He doesn't seek approval. He doesn't care who knows. And that indifference, that's the edge. Rule 9. Become unshakable without money. This is the turning point. Most people don't fear poverty. They fear the loss of identity that comes when money disappears. You take away their income, and suddenly they don't know who they are anymore, because somewhere along the line, they fuse their self-worth to their salary. But the Machiavellian, he's different. He makes money. He multiplies money. He uses money. But he never becomes money. And that's what makes him so dangerous. Because when a man walks into a room and doesn't need anything, everything changes. He doesn't chase deals. He doesn't beg for attention. He doesn't cling to opportunity like it's his last shot. He can walk away while others are still trying to stay relevant. That one fact, that quiet confidence, flips the room, Because power isn't about how much you have. It's about how little you need. When you've built yourself from the ground up with patience, precision, and discipline. Even if you lose it all tomorrow, you know you'll rebuild. Not from luck, not from noise, but from the same core traits that built it the first time. That's what the world can't take from you, your inner structure. Machiavelli didn't cling to wealth. He wielded it like a blade. Precise, silent, lethal when necessary. Not loud, not reckless. Surgical, focused, untouchable. Rule 10. He who controls the flow controls the frame. This rule is subtle, but it changes everything. Machiavelli never obsessed over what people had. He focused on who decided where it went. Power doesn't belong to the one holding the treasure. It belongs to the one who distributes it. You can be rich and still be replaceable. You can own a business and still be powerless. But the person who controls the flow of money, of value, of opportunity, that's who sets the frame. They set the tone of the room. They decide where attention lands. They become the axis. Everyone else revolves around. And here's the truth most people miss. People don't obey out of admiration. They obey out of dependence. The powerful don't yell. They don't plead. They don't even have to be present. Sometimes, just their absence speaks louder than 1,000 commands. When they pause, people panic. When they nod, things move. When they leave, the whole dynamic shifts. So don't chase being the richest in the room. Chase being the person who writes the checks. Chase being the person who decides what survives and what fades. That's the Machiavellian frame. Become the source. And once people believe you control the outcome, you don't need to remind them. The uncertainty is enough. They'll tiptoe around you. Not because you're feared, but because they can't afford to offend the architect of their survival. Rule 11. Never teach them the system. Only let them see the results. In today's world, everyone wants to be a mentor, a guru, a teacher, a brand. They give away their entire blueprint, hoping to be admired for it. But Machiavelli knew better. He never gave away the blueprint. He gave outcomes, never instructions. Because once someone understands your system, they can replicate it. And if they can replicate it, they no longer need you. So what do? You drip value. You give glimpses, not maps. You show just enough to keep them close, but never enough to make them independent. You make your process look like instinct, like art, like magic, not mechanical, not teachable, not repeatable. This is how dynasties preserved power, not just with wealth, but with secrecy. They didn't just pass down gold. They passed down locked rooms, guarded libraries, family knowledge sealed in bloodlines. Because once people believe your results are too complex to understand, they stop trying to beat you. They just try to stay near you. And that's when you become more than an expert. You become an origin, a source of not just income, but identity. When someone starts to see themselves through the lens of your success, they stop thinking like competitors. They start thinking like dependents. And once that happens, you're untouchable. Not just rich, mythic. Rule 12. When you give, attach invisible strings. Most people see generosity as kindness. Machiavelli didn't. To him, giving was a tactic, not to be liked, but to create obligation. He understood something most people ignore. People forget gifts, but they remember debts, especially the ones they never repaid. You help someone in a moment of crisis, with no conditions, no expectations, no reminders, and you leave a mark. Not on their resume, on their psyche. They won't say it, They might not even show it, but deep down they feel it. I owe you. That unspoken bond? That's influence. But here's the key. Never announce it. The more silent the favor, the louder the memory. You don't repeat it. You don't rub it in. You don't give again unless the power structure stays intact. The rarer your help feels, the more sacred it becomes. And people protect what feels sacred. Don't aim to be seen as generous. Aim to be seen as irreplaceable. The one person who showed up when no one else did. Because people don't move for contracts. They move for gratitude. Strategic gratitude. The kind that makes them hesitate before ever crossing you. Because now their decisions aren't just about them anymore. They're about you. And what they owe. That's how you build quiet control. You don't command it. You let it grow inside their conscience. And once it's there, you'll never need to lead out loud again. Rule 13. Build a life where money is present, but never loud. This is where it all leads. The final line that separates those who are merely rich from those who are undeniably powerful. See the rich? They talk about money. They mention the car. They show the watch. They name drop the brand. But the truly powerful? They don't need to say a word. They walk into rooms where money is everywhere. But it's not the topic. It's the atmosphere. It's in the silence, the confidence, the posture. Money is assumed, not explained. And this is the secret Machiavelli understood best. Real wealth doesn't speak. It just moves. It funds decisions. It protects legacies. It influences direction quietly. Because when you truly own your position, you don't advertise it. You embody it. Machiavelli didn't want to be the loudest. He wanted to be the most untouchable. And you don't get that way by showing off. You get that way by engineering your world so deeply that even your silence carries weight. So what does this kind of life look like? It's not about hiding in the shadows. It's about mastering restraint. It's about walking into a room full of noise and being the only one who doesn't have to prove anything. You don't try to impress because you're already respected. You don't over-explain because your presence speaks for itself. You don't need to dominate because everything bends around you. And the best part? You're free. You don't need the spotlight. You don't need the applause. You don't need to convince anyone that you belong because you know who you are. This is the end game. Own more than you show. Control more than you explain. Influence more than you ever have to prove. Machiavelli's playbook wasn't about becoming rich just to be comfortable. It was about becoming so strategically entrenched that money became a shadow, following your every move, never loud, never frantic, never in doubt. Because once you reach that level of internal clarity, once money stops being your goal and starts being your instrument, you no longer chase money. It orbits you. Let's pause for a moment, because this last principle is more than a tactic. It's a standard, a code, a way of operating that transcends flex culture, temporary wins, or surface-level status. Machiavelli wasn't just offering a strategy for wealth. He was offering a blueprint for power that outlasts popularity, power that doesn't shout, power that doesn't beg, power that doesn't collapse the second trends shift or followers disappear. The kind of power that stays standing, even when everything else around it falls apart. So let's tie it all together. What have we learned? Money is not power. It's a mirror, a magnifier, a tool. And if you don't learn how to handle it, it will expose your weaknesses louder than it ever highlights your strengths. But if you master it, if you structure your life with intention, if you control access instead of chasing approval, if you operate in silence, plant seeds, build systems, and measure loyalty with precision, if you give with strategy, not ego. If you can walk away from the table without blinking, then you'll reach a place few people even know exists, where influence is invisible, where your presence is enough, where your wealth doesn't have to be seen because it's felt. Machiavelli didn't write about money in spreadsheets or ledgers. He wrote about it in terms of behavior, leverage, and loyalty. He studied how kings fell, how empires rotted, and how even the richest man could be powerless if he built his life on display instead of discipline. So if you take anything from these 13 rules, let it be this. You don't need to look rich. You need to be untouchable. Because when you get that right, money becomes the quiet echo behind your every move, not the headline. And at that point, you've won. Not because you have more, but because you finally understand how money really operates. Let's end with this. Most people will spend their entire lives chasing money the wrong way, chasing symbols instead of structure, chasing status instead of strategy, chasing a feeling instead of building control. And they'll wonder why no amount of income makes them feel secure, why no raise ever feels like enough, why they keep achieving and still feel replaceable. But Machiavelli would tell you, it was never about money. It was always about what money makes visible, who you obey, who you depend on, who shapes your choices without ever saying a word. He'd say, control the structure or be owned by it. The real game isn't about stacking cash. It's about designing gravity. A force so subtle, people move around you naturally, without being asked, without even realizing why. That's the real flex. Not the car, not the house, not the luxury, but the fact that you don't need to scream to be heard, that your absence causes more disruption than someone else's presence, that when you move, others adjust, and when you stop, things slow down. That's not money. That's mastery. So what now? Revisit every one of these rules, not just to understand them, but to start living them. Because once you stop seeing money as the goal and start seeing it as the lever, everything changes. You'll build different. You'll move different. You'll no longer chase power because you finally become the kind of person power flows to. And when that happens, you won't need to look rich. You'll feel unshakable. If this video hit you different, if something in this script made you rethink how you've been chasing money, then do this. Like the video. It tells the algorithm this message needs to be heard. Subscribe. Because this channel isn't about surface level content. It's about mastering life through strategy, discipline, and power. And drop a comment. Tell me which of the 13 rules hit you the hardest, or which one you're applying first. We're not building followers here. We're building thinkers, strategists, people who don't just survive the game, they reshape it. So if you're about that life, stick around, because this was just the beginning.